Guys around the world and in the great beyond, welcome back to another installment of the Guy Stuff Podcast. We are excited to have back with us today our friend. Can we call you our friend?
Sure.
He said
at least at this moment.
he's like acquaintance, maybe.
Fresh off his nomination to the new Illuminati edition for 2021.
Yes.
The one, the only, Dr. Michael Heiser. Thank you for hanging out with us today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Have you been reading my email?
Exactly. We've been, we got those connections. Exactly.
We know people.
Exactly. We got those connections.
All I want is the email that asks for my direct deposit information.
Exactly. So they can forward you that check.
All this, fortune that, such memberships are supposed to infer on you. Confer.
Well, they actually don't direct deposit. All of it's in gold.
Yeah, straight gold bullion. The balloons.
And it's buried somewhere, right?
Yes, yes.
They just give you the GPS coordinates.
Yes, it's in a cavern near Zunatunuch, on the border of Guatemala and Belize.
Yeah.
That's what the movie National Treasure was trying to show you, is how to get your payment basically from the Illuminati. That's basically what that whole 15 movies with Nick Cage.
I actually did just finish a really good book on the Freemasons, though.
Really?
It was actually very good.
So do you believe
craft? Yeah.
Do you believe it's like a little bit of satanic rituals going on in there, or what is your thought?
I'll describe the book. The book is written by an academic, a historian, but he also has a highly acclaimed book on the mafia, which is there are parts of the history of Freemasonry that cross with the mafia.
Really?
So that's kind of his entry point, into this. But it's very detailed, primary source oriented, stuff like that. So I would say he covers the good, the bad, the ugly, and the Luciferian. Okay, in the book. So it's Freemasonry is the whole gamut. But what you learn in the book, among other things, right, it's a good read, but it's also a good reference, work. Is that the notion that there's one controlling arm or mechanism or body over all of Freemasonry at any time is just utter nonsense, especially today.
Really?
The right hand literally doesn't know what the left hand is doing most of the time. It's kind of, if you can think about Christianity with its splinters.
So it's like the government.
Yeah, it's like the government. It's like Christianity. In terms of all the denominations and the sub-denominations within those denominations, that's what you've got. You've got dozens, if not hundreds, of these groups. Like the Scottish Rite is not original to Freemasonry.
Really?
I mean, that's really the Luciferian, arm, with Albert Pike and all that stuff. That's a 19th century sort of thing. But the numbers are drastically declining. And they have been for the last decade or so.
Nobody can afford that ring.
Exactly. What it is. Nobody wants to ride the goat.
Honestly, people have just lost interest.
Yeah.
Kind of like,
because you can do satanic worship this freely now, so you don't have to hide it behind.
I can look that up on YouTube.
If you're a Luciferian, you don't need the Brotherhood and all that kind of stuff. But if you're a general Freemason, we've become, just think of millennial culture, it's just, it affects everything.
Yeah.
And the decline of churches, because most Masons are, it's kind of like AA, accept God as you know him and all that kind of, understand him, and just very broad to where it means everything and then therefore it means nothing. But a lot of people just they're not interested. For a number of reasons. So, but it's a good historical overview, and it doesn't say to the Luciferian stuff, oh, this is just silliness. No, there's really, this is really a wing.
Wow.
Of Freemasonry, and then he gets into the weeds with that. But it was actually very interesting. So I recommend it.
To check that out. our Dr. Heiser strange
Approved
things of reading list
reading
that we
list.
need to get on there. There you go.
Speaking of strange things, I got to jump in here real quick. So, Dr. Heiser may have noticed a moment ago that I held up an odd object. We have a little contest going on, gang, if you're listening.
Yes.
A little contest. There are going to be certain things, strange things, perhaps.
Yes. Or even stranger things.
Maybe that appear in this particular episode. And we are going to, Dr. Heiser was so kind to give us just a treasure trove of autographed Dr. Heiser's books, just amazing.
However, he didn't tell us, he didn't actually send them to us. He sent a map with like the geo coordinates on. We have to go track it down.
Yes.
That's part of what, to get it, you have to go send the map.
Yep.
Yeah. You have to find it.
We will send you the map. But we're going to have a few different odd things throughout this particular episode. And whoever messages us on our Facebook and gives us the items in the proper order, we're going to send you an autographed book.
There you go.
That's how this is going to go down. So now Dr. Heiser knows why I held up that very odd object a moment ago. He's like, what is wrong with these people?
Yeah, see. Now, Anthony just wanted to hold up a skull, and it has nothing to do with the contest, Dr. Heiser. Anthony's just...
It's a former student.
He's just kind of strange.
I told him to be quiet. I told him.
What'd you call him?
Ramirez.
Ramirez.
From Highlander?
Yeah,
This is Ramirez. Yes, because he lost his head like twice.
We need to name, I've got 2 skulls now in my Fringe Pop studio, and then the alien. None of them have names.
You got to name them.
You got to name them.
That's like a boat without a name. You can't have that. It's bad luck.
Something does not have life if it does not have a name.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
do you have a crystal skull though? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. You have a crystal skull.
Crystal skull.
Yeah.
Yeah, crystal skull.
There you go.
If I count that one, then I have 4. But yeah.
Did you see? I don't. Yeah, I probably don't. But if you ever watched Joe Rogan with Dan Aykroyd, you would probably like it, Dr. Heiser. I watched it, and they got off.
Aykroyd comes from a long line of spiritualists.
Yeah, a lot of. I didn't realize how like the movie Ghostbusters was written on his based on his kind of like his loosely his dad or his granddad's like fascination with spiritualism and occultism and stuff like that. So it was interesting. But anyway, he had like a alcoholic beverage that he makes that they pour over diamonds and stuff, but it's actually one of the crystal skulls is based off of the crystal skull kind of thing. I was like, this is very interesting and very weird and very odd.
I wonder if the liquid leaks into the holes that you can find because of the manufacturer on the quote unquote original crystal skulls.
Yeah. The 75,000 out there
that have been subjected to electron microscopy, so it's definite proof that they were manufactured late.
There you go.
I wonder if it leaks into any of those.
Completely debunked.
You have to suck out the liquid from the holes, the manufacturing holes,
with very small straws.
There you go. There you go.
Every time that I talk with Dr. Heiser, he debunks something. It's like
that we hold
casual conversation. Yeah. Oh, that's not real.
Look, it's discouraging. Okay, it's discouraging because, I've been into fringe stuff for like 20 years, and it's like, isn't anything like legit? It's like, give me something.
Bigfoot.
There you go. Bigfoot's real.
Sasquatch.
Oh yeah, but I would say Bigfoot's still a question mark. There's no physical evidence yet, but I'm willing to put that in the question mark category.
Yeah, there you go.
There it is.
I'm willing to do that.
Yeah,
there it is.
Cryptozoology, like all those are like Bigfoot's probably the funnest cryptozoological thing out there. Like Loch Ness is not that fun. Like if you found a Plesiosaurus or whatever it's called, Plesiosaurus.
Yeah, what are you gonna do with that?
It's not that fun.
Plesiosaur nuggets.
Yeah.
What do we do with that?
You'd pickle it.
Exactly.
Clearly.
Or something.
Yeah, some pickle flippers. I don't know, but like. The Sasquatch has it's like if there's a big man ape running around in the woods all over the world, that's kind of sexy and kind of fun. Like you go, oh, that's interesting.
The fact that you find that
not sexy in that way, you know what I'm saying? Not like I'm a hairy dude and I'm pretty sexy, but I'm just saying.
You're saying props.
Yeah.
Props to it. We got you. We got you, Sasquatch.
Exactly.
All right, so I'm gonna transition us here from that terrifying whatever that was John just talked about. This is for our friends who are still listening.
All four of them.
There's a couple of them.
Yes,
I will say this, Dr. Heiser. Your last episode, right, has gotten the longest views we've had on the channel. Like people sat there and watched the whole thing.
How many threatening letters and emails did it
Only about 5. Only about 5.
They were all from the Illuminati.
Yeah, exactly. They were like, just shut this guy down. Shut this guy down.
We're in with the Rothschilds though, so we don't.
Yeah,
we don't worry.
good. We cared.
But
we did get it. We haven't got our Independent Baptist website up yet. But for people that are calling us heretics,
working on that.
That one we're still working on. When that happens, Dr. Heiser, you know we've made it. We were like,
hey, I know exactly how to do that, and we'll do it another episode if we can convince him to come back. We can convince him one more time.
He's like, we good. I'll send you some books.
We can convince him to come back. This is how we do it.
You want me to give my testimony?
That would work. Or
that's my
Bible translations.
Fundamental Baptist. Oh yeah, that would. Well, in fairness, my original spiritual context was Fundamental Baptist, and we were not King James only.
Really?
But a lot of them are. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like, the one thing I always found interesting. I love Dr. James White. I love listening to his debates. Great debater. And actually, it was hilarious. I watched y'all's exchange. There was a little exchange y'all had a couple times, and that was hilarious. I laughed so hard on both sides. It was great. But because it was just like anyway. I love Dr. James, but you killed him on it. Anyway, where'd I go with it? Oh, what were I talking? Oh man, I got lost in the weeds.
Bible version.
Yeah, Bible version. I love watching his debates with King James only people, because it's just like they don't know what to do with it. This is like, oh, there's these manuscripts that is better than and their minds just melt. It's just great to watch.
This might have just gotten us that channel, John.
And the fact that there were 26 editions of the TR, and the TR is 22 years after the King James was published.
There you go.
That's kind of mind bending for them too. But
yeah, it's interesting, So anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Anthony.
It's all good. We're gonna jump to a topic. Again, this is the spooky Halloween episode. So
this is the Halloween episode, by the way.
I'm going to preface this question this way. I'm a big fan of primary sources, if I can find them, right. And so years ago, when I wanted to read about Halloween, when I wanted to read about Halloween, I got a book about Halloween written by an actual Wiccan. All right. And she was perplexed in this book as to why Christians celebrate Halloween. She was like, I don't get it. So that's the short version. So John and I, one of the questions we would love for you to talk about today is it, and we're not saying we come down one way or the other, although John was talking about costumes before the show. Is it acceptable in your viewpoint as a theologian for Christ followers to celebrate Halloween?
It depends on what you mean by celebrate.
We're not sacrificing goats or anything. It's just like, putting a ghost in the door.
Yeah, that's an easy call. No.
Dang it!
But I mean, even sort of celebrating or glorifying things like spiritual evil. Just use a broad reference to spiritual evil. I don't think ghosts are necessarily evil spirits. They probably, by and large, they would be. But let's just take that category. Even ghosts, which a lot of people, believe, right or wrong, that they've seen a ghost or had some ghost experience. Well, there's having an experience, there's having an interest in like, what was that, as opposed to sort of glorifying the notion that the dead return on a regular basis, which leads to B, invariably, I want to contact them. Okay, I mean, there are certain lines that shouldn't be crossed. I mean, part of it is let's again sticking with the ghost topic. Part of it is just basic to human curiosity.
Mm.
Well, I wonder if that's real.
Yeah.
And then there's this. I think that there is a danger if you spend too much time into that subject. You start to inside you want solicitation. You want the experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's just a progression there. So I use that as an example to say, to me, it's not a simple, what about Halloween kind of question. It depends on, your attitude toward it. It depends on what you would consider sort of, normal. Like, people like to be scared. Okay, well, yeah, that's like a normal, human thing. I mean, for you to scare somebody and get a kick out of that, and then them to, like, tit for tat, all that sort of stuff, and that's normal. It's normal to wonder about the reality of the unseen world in terms of like ghosts and things like that. So there's that category, but then there's this glorification of spiritual evil, glorification of death, glorification of just really the cheapening of human life, like slasher movies. Like me, I personally will not watch a slasher movie because I think it, and I know it's all special effects, all that kind of stuff. Okay. I mean, I'm not squeamish in that regard. Like our first kid, I went back to the OR and watched them sew my wife up because she tore. It's like, this is like a Nova special.
No,
It was fascinating. It was fascinating. I mean, she didn't feel anything. If she had been in pain, then that would have been a different story. But I mean,
I saw the insides of my wife on her second baby.
Man, yeah.
On her chest. Well, no, it was nothing like that. It was just. It was just remarkable, the hand skill of like sewing her up, and it was I mean, like how did you learn how to do that?
Yeah. See, y'all need to be like morticians and stuff. Y'all have the brain of a mortician. They ain't nobody.
I mean, I say all that to say this. I do not watch slasher movies because to me they cheapen human life, and human life has value.
Yeah.
It has extreme value. So. I think should we celebrate Halloween? Like that's the first thing I need to know. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Does it mean that I'm going to turn my lights off and I'm not giving candy to kids who are in costumes?
Yeah.
No, I mean, we do that.
Yeah.
This year I'm going to slip in the Stranger Things book. What? Like I'm serious. I'm looking forward to it.
Everybody go to Dr. Heiser's. If y'all don't win a contest, go to Dr. Heiser's house for Halloween. You get a free copy.
That's right. But you got to dress up. If you're not in costume, you ain't getting nothing.
Put one in every bag, because I think Christians can do Halloween in a certain way, again, to remind not only themselves but people of good things. I mean, it is a good thing to believe that there is a spiritual world.
Yeah.
Let's just start really basic.
Yeah.
Because what's the alternative? Atheist materialism.
Yeah.
That's the alternative.
Yep.
Okay, so you can, I mean, if you get somebody who believes in ghosts, it's like, oh, well, if you believe in that, then you're not this. Do you realize how important that is?
Wow.
Yeah. Exactly. I think basically Christians can use anything, to start a conversation, and the fact that you start the conversation doesn't mean that you allow, spiritual evil or something that's really grotesque in human culture to dictate the terms of the conversation. I don't think you should do that. So it's, to me, it's a very variegated question. I don't know. To me, it's not a yes or no question. It depends on what you mean, what you're doing, why you're doing it, all that sort of stuff.
Makes sense.
I mean, I'll eat a pumpkin cookie. I'll eat a cookie.
I love them little candy pumpkins. They are
my Lord,
the best.
That's my favorite thing in Halloween. Is like a pumpkin, little candy pumpkin.
Like for trick or treat, we would take our kids out, but there were certain things you are not going to dress up as, and this is why.
Like Anton LaVey.
Yeah. You know, well, anything that falls into these other categories, you know, this really, you know, spiritual evil kind of stuff, or promoting this or that idea. You know, we would go with other Christians. We would, you know, and we would always take them to, you know, to like neighborhoods we knew and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, we did it, but we didn't do a lot of the other stuff that would sort of come along with the trappings that sort of go along with it.
Yes, sir.
So we tried to do something, but, you know, try to articulate, you know, what we thought about it as well. You know.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, if I'm going to try to break this down in like just kind of a encapsulated thought. As Christians, we should look for every single opportunity to engage the culture.
I think so, and I think we need to dictate the terms of the engagement as well.
That's good.
Yeah, it's good.
You know, like if I have a daughter, you know, she wants to go as Princess Leia. Okay, you know, we watch Star Wars. You know, that's different than I want to go as some disembodied ghoul. You know, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
You know? Again, that's a glorification of death. You know,
so you can tell who all the little Christian kids are trick or treating. They like dress as Bible characters.
Exactly. Like this is Ezekiel.
That's a great idea. I mean, we've had, you know, like at church, they would have alternate like parties and stuff like that where the kids would dress up. I mean, I don't have any problem with that. If that is happening in connection with Halloween, well, that's cheating. Well, no, let your kids have a good time. Tell them why you're doing it and not something else. You know, little kids come to your house. You know, you don't need to open the door and scream John 3:16 at them or tell them they're going to hell. You know,
you put that on the candy.
Yeah, you put that on the. Yeah, you get those candies. You know,
Dr. Heiser, I want to see you get together with a bunch of theological friends and y'all go as the wheel within the wheels.
Right. We're all big Lord of the Rings fans, so we wondered about dressing up as Lord of the Rings characters just at home. So when people come to the house, it's like there's Gandalf or Gimli or.
Love it so much.
So the question is, what would you play there, Dr. Heiser?
I'm Gandalf.
You gotta be Gandalf.
Well, I have to be because of the whole Christian Middle Earth thing.
There you go.
Can't get away from that. So
see, that's one thing I love about like Tolkien. It's this fantastical world, but it has so many connections, and I didn't realize how many connections it had to Tolkien's theology until I started reading Unseen Realm. I was like, oh, and the angel theology and a lot of the Second Temple stuff.
I don't know if you've listened. Have you caught either of the episode? Well, the first one really. We had Louis Marcos on, who's an English prof at HBU, but he's a Tolkien expert.
Really?
He wrote a long, very glowing review of Unseen Realm that got sent to me, and then I thanked him for it. And then we wound up striking up a conversation, you know, a friendship. And so I had him on the podcast. He's been on twice. We're going to have him on again in January. He's coming out with a book on how Christians can and should read classical mythology. You know, like just again,
sounds like a guy that should be on our podcast.
I mean, well, he's a live wire, man. He is. I mean, you'd enjoy him.
That'd be great.
But now he has a friend here in Tampa, or you know, Tampa's 4 or 5 hours away from where I'm at, who just came out with a book on. Let me just look up the title because we're going to have him on.
All right.
In a few weeks, but it's Tolkien. It's the theology of the Lord of the Rings.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And this is on the Naked Bible or the which podcast?
It's going to be Naked Bible.
Naked Bible. Okay. Great. So we'll make sure we put a link down there so everybody can check out Naked Bible podcast.
Yeah, it's called The Good News of the Return of the King, the Gospel in Middle Earth.
There we go.
So, yeah, I have the book at home. I haven't read it yet, but it's going to be 3 or 4 weeks. We're going to have him on, something like that. But
that's awesome.
There's a lot of good stuff there.
That's awesome.
There really is.
That's one thing that, like, we had a friend of ours. He's a filmmaker, works for the BBC and National Geographic, stuff like that. He was on. He was out here working undercover, doing undercover filmmaking for a rescue organization we partner with, and he was on with us. And we've been like, we would sit out and just love Lord of the Rings, both of us. We were talking about we have to go to Middle Earth. Like we got to like dress up and go to New Zealand and try to walk from the Shire to Rivendell and try to figure that out, man. We actually got a little ways on it, trying to get it all organized out. But
yeah, we talked about a whole documentary, like taking our children and like starting in England, and through where everything was written and everything, and then going all the way over and so forth. It could be so.
Yeah. Well, when we have the author's name of this other book is Mike Jahosky. I'll ask him about that. Like, hey, have you guys ever considered, like doing some sort of like talk to the publisher, doing some sort of film, thing for small group Bible studies or what? Like, just in other words, do something to get a trip to New Zealand.
Exactly. That's why I was like, how do I figure out a way to get a free trip to New Zealand? It's like, how do I figure that out?
Speaking of Lord of the Rings, that makes me think of your work. So this past weekend, Dr. Heiser, I needed to unplug my brain for a little bit. And so
that was a backhanded comment there, Anthony. That was a really backhanded comment there. I'm sorry, Dr. Heiser.
I'm not done with the comment.
So I wanted to stop, turn off my brain. So I picked up your book, Dr. Heiser.
I actually went and I watched the first An Unexpected Journey. The movie version of The Hobbit, where they took The Hobbit and added lots of fun stuff.
The animated one.
No, not the animated, not the 1970 whatever one, the new Hobbit.
Oh, you're talking about the recent one.
Yeah, the recent one. Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
And so they're on the side of the mountain, and the giants are fighting, and I thought, giants, Nephilim, Dr. Heiser,
See, this is the point. That's
so
the point.
You're trying to angle for the trip to New Zealand.
That's what that's what it is. Dr. Heiser, come and get this. But one thing that I want to talk to Dr. Heiser about, well, I'm going to pick you in the eye there, Anthony, is because this is something that goes back to the KJV and a lot of like Bible translation stuff, is the actual height of the giants. Like everybody's like, oh, Goliath was 9 feet, 10 feet tall. Like, well, if you look at the Septuagint and the Dead Sea Scrolls, he was only about 6.5, maybe 7 foot tall, which was freaking huge back then because they were like, what, average height was like 5'2" or something like that, 5'3". So he would have been a giant in their eyes, but he wasn't like we think about like ogreish giant. And so what would you think? Well, I mean, you are the expert. What is your take on that, Dr. Heiser? Is there really giants, or are they like just really, really tall people?
Well, I think they're, if we're going by biblical, numbering, and there are, this is for your King James only episodes. I mean, there are lots of reasons why the Septuagint of 1 Samuel 17 is the better text. So if you're going to go with that, along with the Dead Sea Scrolls, then you've got Goliath at between 6'6" and 6'9", which is a really tall person. But you have to realize that in biblical days, according to most of the skeletons that people have from the ancient Bible lands, there are a few that go back to maybe the time of David or the monarchy, because Israelites didn't embalm. So most of the people who ever lived in Canaan, they're literally dust. You're not going to discover skeletons and things like that. But the ones that have been found, typically the average height is for a man, 5'4", 5'5", something like that. So yeah, if you put, what's his name, the lineman, just pick a lineman. I used to use somebody like
Put Shaq.
Too Tall Jones, okay? Too Tall Jones, or I can't remember the guy's name for New Orleans now. It's like 6'8" or 6'9". But I mean, you get a lineman at 6'8", 6'9", 300 some pounds next to a guy that's 5'5". All right, that's intimidating.
Yeah.
And if you cluster these people, in places in the promised land that, oh yeah, we got to go in and take that city. So not only does the city have walls, but look who's waiting for us.
Yeah.
There's no wonder. There's no wonder that they thought they were just going to get their butts kicked, all day long. by these guys, because they were not only outclassed in terms of their experience militarily and their weaponry, but just the sheer size.
Yes.
I mean, okay, let's do that. Let's put a high school team, average high school football team, up against a professional, a couple of professional linemen.
Wow. This is really one of those heartwarming moments in sports where you just, oh my God.
Yeah, that'll work.
Unless it's the Cincinnati Bengals, in which case the high school team would win.
Well, Cincinnati's not as bad as they were a couple of last year.
That's great when you talk about a football team and the way you judge their successes, they're not as bad as they were.
Right. Well, okay, that's fair enough.
They had Boomer Esiason.
I'm not a Bengals fan, but I do pay attention.
I mean, they had Boomer. What's his name? Boomer Esiason. Esiason back in the '80s. They had a little bit going on there. I don't know what to do now.
It's like look at the Derrick Henry straight arm from Tuesday night. Did you guys see that?
No.
Derrick Henry, the Titans running back. Go up to YouTube, put Derrick Henry straight arm.
Okay.
All right. He just destroys Josh Norman.
Yes, he did. He gives it to Henry. Henry trying to get to the outside.
All right.
I mean, like swatting a fly, like the Oliphant scene in Return of the King, swatting away. It's unbelievable. And Henry's not small. He's 6'4", 220.
Man.
He ain't doing that to one of the linemen.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's not going to work.
Yeah. He ain't stiff arming.
As
350 pound dude.
intimidating as that would be coming at you.
Yeah.
Again, if you're 320 pounds and you're 6'8", no.
You can stiff arm.
Yeah, let's try that.
Yeah.
But so but biblically speaking, you got him at 6'6", 6'9". There is a reference to an Egyptian, a person that has no name in the Bible, who's, if we take the cubits there, who would be a little taller than that, probably in the 7 foot range. But that's what I think we're dealing with here with the Anakim and the Rephaim and Goliath and stuff like that. It's really a question of scale, when it comes down to comparison. You don't need freakish 20 30 foot giants and all that kind of stuff. You don't need that, and textually you don't have any basis for it.
Yes, that's one thing that always when I found that out, I was like, one of the things in Bible college that blew my mind. I was like, what? Goliath, what, 9 feet tall? And so, but I was asking, like, why is that still perpetuated? Why is that still, when Bible translations happen?
It's because translations don't use the Dead Sea Scrolls. And in the case of 1 Samuel 17, they're going to go with the Masoretic text reading, and then you'll get a little footnote.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So people will be using study Bibles, and they'll read the footnote, and that's what they'll read.
Yes.
And so that becomes canon. That's canon knowledge now. This footnote in my study Bible.
Gotcha.
Since I found that footnote in a Bible, like if you don't accept that, well, then you don't believe the Bible. No, I actually don't believe the footnote.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little different than the biblical text, which is based on manuscripts. So, like, let's look at the manuscripts.
Yes, sir.
But, there you go.
And that's one of the things that I can go, but I mean, one of the things I think, maybe you can correct me on this, is it's been so perpetuated, like, you're facing your giants. There's all this thousands, and how many times have you heard a sermon about facing the giant and facing, and you go, and now you kind of bring him back down into normal, as we would consider normal, height or normal person range, and then the whole thing.
I just remembered it's Calais Campbell.
Calais Campbell.
Right? Okay, Calais Campbell is still a problem.
Yeah, he's still a problem. But the thing that gets me,
if you're at a little, let's say a little Halloween festival at church, and the game is run past Calais Campbell, okay, you're still facing a giant.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm only 5'7". So like most people to me are giants. Still,
Yeah.
Right. You win a prize if you can get past him without him putting you on your butt. Okay. That's still a problem.
That always got me too. Is like when you actually go and look at, you start realizing, okay, Goliath was probably this height, but then you look at the story and you see, okay, this ruddy little boy is going to go out and actually face him, which is terrifying.
Total mismatch.
Yeah, it's total mismatch. But then you look at Saul. Saul was supposed to be about the same height. He was head and shoulders above everybody else. Like he was chosen, and so he would have been
He
more of a
would have
match.
been the guy that would have matched up the best.
Yes,
and
but
he was in his
powerful.
He's the
tent
last
playing
guy
Nintendo.
volunteering.
Exactly. exactly. So
Well,
anyway,
but that detail, I mean, it's not only there for that irony again to portray Saul, rightly so in a poor light. The fact that they would throw in the detail about his height is also, it shows this. I mean, there's no direct connection back to like a Nephilim line or anything like that. But the tribe of Benjamin, if you go back to the book of Judges, is a tribe that failed to get rid of the giant clans in their area. Okay, Caleb has to go in there and mop things up. And so if you're aware of that, you're thinking, okay, how is failure measured at the time of the conquest? It's intermingling. It's living letting them live among your population, and you're among there. You don't drive them out. You don't eliminate them. And so it sows this little seed of doubt about Saul. You have to leave it there. Otherwise, you're operating with the hermeneutic of suspicion, which isn't a really good tool for exegesis.
Come on, Pentecostal church been doing a long time. It's fine.
Well, there's enough in there that, again, if you're an Israelite, you're thinking, should we have really chosen this guy as our king? What were we thinking? It's enough, again, to set the stage for David really well.
Yes, sir. Yes, and that's just really interesting. Like this, and that's what I learned. I went, oh, cool. This is actually something that helps me understand the context of what's actually going on and what the author is actually trying to say. Which brings me to it. I'm sorry.
Well, let's go back to the Halloween thing.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
There is a rather circuitous, and I'm betting the witch. I'm betting the Wiccan who wrote the book didn't include this. Okay, but there is a Celtic Irish tradition that links back to the giants.
Really?
Yes.
Ooh, tell us about this, Dr. Heiser.
This is part of, I mean, if people want, details on this, I have another podcast that we haven't done an episode in quite a while, but we need to. It's called Pure Normal.
Pure Normal, yeah. Love that one. That's a great one.
PureNormal.com, just PEER and then A and then normal.com. So what we do is
how many podcasts do you have, Dr. Heiser?
Two.
Like 79.
We haven't done an episode on that one for a while. But one of the episodes we did was on Samhain, which is the Wiccan witchy poo term, or basically the more correct. I shouldn't say more correct, but.
And if you're looking it up, gang, it's not
Samhain
spelled like it sounds. It's Samhain.
Right. It's Gaelic for summer's end, which when the summer ends, you have the fall. Okay, which again is going to be associated with Halloween later, and historically. So it's a Gaelic festival that marks either the end of the summer or came to mark the end of the harvest season, and so which is the beginning of winter, the beginning of the darker half of the year, these sorts of ideas. And so we did an episode on this along with Halloween. And one of the things that you get into on Pure Normal, what we do is we take topics that are fringe or paranormal, and we look at peer-reviewed literature about those topics. And then everybody on that, we have a 4 or 5 guest host panel. We all read the articles, and then we just talk about them. Okay, what did we find out? What did we learn? That sort of thing. If it's like ESP, it's usually I'll send people literature on experiments. A lot of people don't realize that real PhDs in real relevant subject areas actually are into these topics. So, we'll talk about what was the experiment they did, how did they set it up, what they learned, what do they think they need to do next, what can they say, what couldn't they say, That's what we do in the show.
Yeah.
So when we did the Halloween episode, I came across the source is Hastings Encyclopedia of Religion and something. It's an older set, but in many ways it's still unsurpassed. It's a great reference source, and you can get it for free at archive.org. Each volume, it's in PDF. It's old enough to be in public domain. And
Nice.
So the Samhain was, it has an intersection in old Irish Gaelic folklore with a group called the Fomorians and the Nemedians. Okay, there are these different groups, and I'm just going to read you part of it.
Roll with it.
It says, early Irish literature refers to the tax of the year's corn and milk and of 2/3 of the children born within the year, to the evil Fomorians on Samhain Eve. So you had to pay a tithe to these, whatever these individuals were, of corn and milk, and then children born in the year.
So like you had to pay a child?
Yes, you had to turn them
It means
over.
exactly what it sounds like.
Oh, wow.
Right, it's a sacrifice to the gods, and they were burned in the fire on Samhain Eve. But,
the bone fire.
but though the powers of blight may have been propitiated, I mean, you do this so that you have the harvest is okay. It is not unlikely that the primitive slaying of a human representative of the corn spirit or some divinity of growth was later conceived as a propitiatory sacrifice. According to, again, analysts, which is a Gaelic, researchers, the first group of personages who came to Ireland, originally settled Ireland, were Noah's granddaughter, Cessair, with 50 women and 3 men, all of whom were destroyed by a flood, save one called Fintain. They were followed by Partholon and his company, who found the Fomorians settled there. So Noah's ancestors finally, settle, like after the flood, in a place, and they find the Fomorians there. Well, who are the Fomorians? They're a supernatural race in Irish mythology, often portrayed as hostile and monstrous beings who came from the sea peoples, okay, which
There you go,
are the giant traditions,
Nice.
or underground. Giant means of the earth. Okay. Later, they were portrayed as giants and sea raiders. They are the enemies of Ireland's first settlers and opponents, the good guys, and so on and so forth. But I mean, I could go on and on, but they're actually these sort of giant vestiges, these vestiges of giant clans in old Ireland that become involved with these rites and rituals on Samhain, which is, again, that version of Halloween. I mean, those two things are going to become conflated at some point.
So let me ask a question there, Dr. Heiser. This is on that note. If that is even partially true, if there's a little nugget of truth that there's like the Nephilim are there, how did you talk about this in your book a little bit? How did they survive the flood? Like this was like another fall happened? Did another?
They were sea people, dude. They can swim.
They were like they were Lanteans. They're Lanteans.
Well, that's the Blavatsky version. No, Jonathan has part of one answer trajectory. I mean, there's actually, in Unseen Realm, I talk a little bit about this. I can't remember what chapter it's in, 22 or 23 or something like that. 23 probably. Where the quick answer is that let me put it this way, the same question was being asked in antiquity. So this is not a new question. And so you have the same answers then as basically you do now. It's the same options. So option number one is that somewhere in Noah's family, there was we would use a term like a carrier, but somebody was involved in this. Okay.
Gotcha.
And so when they survive, then the lineage, survives. Now, people object to that on the basis of Genesis 6:9. Noah was pure in his generations. Well, the word there for generation is dor, D-O-R in Hebrew. It is not the normal term for lineal descendants. Dor refers to like the generation of the 60s, people alive at the time. I mean, they're not related. They're just people alive at the time. The other term, like these are the generations of, that's Toledot. It's not Dor. Now, in honesty, there is one place in the book of Numbers, I believe, where Dor is used of lineal descent. Okay, so you could use, I don't think it's a good argument, but it's still possible. You could use Genesis 6:9 and say Noah's family was not involved in this. But you could, the other side would say, well, that's not the lineal descent term normally, so maybe they were.
Yeah.
And that's one option. This is why rabbinic texts have Noah as a giant.
Really?
There's a couple of those. It's why, among the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Genesis Apocryphon has Noah's parents, Lamech, and it gives a name for his mom in that text, Bitanosh, are arguing about whether she's pregnant by the Watchers or not.
Oh.
It's why, a pseudepigraphical text has Noah when he's born is kind of a weird kid. Like he has light coming out of his eyes and he has an afro. It's just really weird stuff. Not enough.
It's
Afro,
legit.
we associate
Seems
with
100%
African-American.
legit.
Yeah, like
I mean, his skin shines. This is not a normal kid.
yeah.
Okay, so
I mean,
so what
that's
it
what
tells
happened when
you
I was
is-
born. I mean,
You just had to fro, man. That was it. You just had to fro. That was it. That was just
Yeah, but I mean, the word used for this actually, it's in Ethiopic. It's where the term survives. So it's a later language, but it's the term used. Big bushy hair.
I
So
want a fro.
what these texts
You
tell
just want
you
hair.
is that there was a stream of tradition within Second Temple Judaism that thought Noah might be a little unusual.
Ah,
He might not have normal parentage. Okay.
yeah. That's
But
interesting.
in the Genesis Apocryphon, Noah's mom gets angry and don't you remember the other night? And okay, they have a reconciliation. He basically cuts him off. at the
that's
knees.
quite hilarious.
Yeah, that's good.
So yeah, it's kind of a famous sort of funny text, But that's one trajectory. Another trajectory is the flood was regional.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean a few football fields and sides. We're talking hundreds of thousands of square miles.
Yeah.
But part of that tradition is what Jonathan said, that you have a sea people tradition, and so they could have survived. In that way, or after the flood, some who had populated Canaan earlier from Anatolia and the Hurrians and stuff like this. I'm assuming a lot on the basis of, I'm assuming a lot from your audience, because the pre-Canaanite populations that we read about in the text of the Bible, all these terms you get in Joshua and whatnot, and Numbers, they come from one of three places. They're either Amorites, which is north Syria. They have Hurrian or Hittite lineage. That's two. That's Anatolia. And then the third one they come from the Sea Peoples. Some of these terms come right out of Anatolian languages. So the third group, again, would have been in the Aegean somewhere. And so they just come to the land later, and that's where you get some of these people. They just show up later. The third option is the grammar of Genesis 6:4, where it says, there were Nephilim on the earth in those days and also after.
Yeah.
All right, you can translate it. This is a possible translation, because you have certain particles there in Hebrew followed by an imperfect verb. You could translate this, there were Nephilim on the earth in those days whenever the sons of God came into the daughters of men.
So it's like an ongoing kind of thing.
It creates this suggestion of this wasn't the last time this happened.
Yeah.
So those are the three essential trajectories that people have followed or talked about to answer that question.
Gotcha.
I mean, who knows what the answer is for real? I mean, the simplest one is probably the local or regional flood, but
Yeah.
again, who knows? You know?
Yeah, that's the thing is that's another thing that people will lose their mind over. You start talking about the flood. Like I'm more of like the Dr. Ross or Hugh Ross kind of universal, not global kind of thing. That seems to make more sense to me. It seems to fit, and it's textually. I believe I listened to one of your actual podcasts
Yeah,
talking about that
for your
before.
listeners who are interested in this, if you go to Google, put in drmsh.com, and then put in the word flood and local or regional, and you're gonna find a post that I did. This was sort of a, you could call it a thought experiment, but I get the question often enough that I thought, okay, I'm just going to post this, and then people have it as a reference point.
Yeah.
So the post is about how you would biblically, textually argue for a local or regional flood. And again, the short version is that if you take the phrases, all the earth, like kol eretz, or all flesh, kol basar, you can find these phrases elsewhere in the Hebrew Bible where they occur occasionally in contexts that absolutely cannot mean exhaustive totality. All the people went to the temple. Oh, really? All the people in the like every last person in Canaan, they how'd they get them in there? I mean, they're expressions that try to get across the point of like everybody was there, and we use language like this now. So that's the first leg. You look and you find these places where the exact same language in Genesis 6 through 8 can be found elsewhere where it's not exhaustive totality, and then that raises a question. Well, is it okay to not see exhaustive totality in Genesis 6 through 8? I mean, is that possible? And then the second question is the reference in Genesis 9 that makes it very clear that all of the nations, that were known at the time, the Table of Nations, were connected with the sons of Noah. All right. Well, that tells you, and it says all the nations of the earth. That tells you how they define all the earth. It's the Eastern Mediterranean and North Africa. It's
populated and known.
Right. So that what you would do with that is you'd say, okay, what's the context for Genesis 6 through 8? Well, the context would be Genesis 9 and 10.
Yeah.
But I mean,
it follows along.
It's not a hard argument to make biblically. It's just that there aren't a whole lot of people that sort of out of the gate even ask those kind of questions.
Yes, sir.
Because you just read it in your English Bible. It says all always means all. Well, yeah, except where it doesn't. But I mean, we just sort of read the passage one way, and it never occurs to us, could there be another way? And so people just never get there unless they get into apologetics stuff, online, whatever.
All right, so I'm going to ask some questions based on that I know some listeners are having out there. So I'm going to ask those questions for those folks. So a few things. What would you say to people who believe and present evidence that they feel like, things like fossils, being covered rapidly, and even the suboceanic floor, basically the earth having a crack like an egg all the way around it. It's like, what would you say to folks who present what they feel like is strong evidence to a global catastrophe versus what you're talking about? I want to ask that question because I know people are thinking it.
He gonna call them stupid. Yeah. You can call them stupid. We can call them.
No, I would. He's
more tactful than that, John.
In other words, I could make something up here and sound really academic here, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to give the honest answer. I'm not a geologist, and chances are you aren't either. Okay, so what I do is I defer geological data to geologists. I let them fight that battle because the battle is about rocks and geology. I don't know that stuff.
Geology isn't a real science.
The only thing I know is the text. The text can go either way. I don't really at that level, I don't really care. I care about what the text can sustain. It's more honest for me to tell people as a biblical scholar what the text can sustain rather than trying to bend the text to one interpretation only when I know that isn't the case. That's not honest on my part.
Yeah.
So you will find plenty of Christian geologists who are old earthers. In other words, they accept, these millions and millions or whatever the numbers are. I mean, you'll occasionally find, a geologist that looks at something, on the other side and says, no, this is like fast formation, or they'll use like the Mount St. Helens stuff. Well, again, newsflash, there are events like Mount St. Helens.
Yeah.
And those things do happen. And so there's no reason to think they didn't happen in the past. But how would we know that that's the only thing that happened? In other words, these are just basic logic questions. Right. You might be digging in a place where you have this event and you have mixed data. Who knows? Again, that's why I leave it to geologists. I couldn't tell the difference from one to the other. And if you have both, what does that mean? I don't know.
Yeah. So sorry, are you another question, Anthony? Sorry, go ahead, man.
No. You go ahead. I had the last one. That's all.
Well, no, all I was gonna say is that we this is the Halloween episode and we kind of got off on the context.
ADD, man.
We wound
now we're out.
Who are we talking to again?
Let me add one more thing.
Go ahead.
To this, while we're on the way, while I'm chiming about honesty, and that is, if you're out there in internet land listening to this episode, and you think, oh well, Dr. Heiser, he doesn't know that there's things like T-Rex fossils with soft tissue, and blood in them. Well, actually, I do, because I just brought it up. I do know that. And the person who discovered that, is an old Earth creationist. Mary Schweitzer. She teaches in North Carolina. She was a student of Jack Horner, who's the guy that Dr. Grant in Jurassic Park is modeled after.
Really?
Horner, oh yeah, Horner is fascinating. You should, if you want to read about Horner and Mary Schweitzer. Horner is not a Christian, but if you read his book How to Build a Dinosaur, it's very evident he's very fond of Schweitzer, his student. And I think it's because their stories are somewhat similar. Horner has no degrees.
Really?
At all. He has severe dyslexia.
Wow.
He just happens to know everything about paleontology. Like he would have people read him articles. He had published articles that people wrote for him, like he would dictate it, published in journals. And when people found out like who this dude was, the University of Montana just said, we don't really care if you don't have any degrees. We're hiring you.
That's awesome.
So he's a professor of paleontology there. And he's very controversial, as the Grant portrayal makes clear. This is the guy who would find a fossil and break it. Like look at the I mean, that's like, you don't do that. And he's like, oh, we got plenty of these. Smash the thing up, and see what's inside. So that's the guy. This is the guy. Yeah. And Mary Schweitzer is somewhat familiar. She was a homeschool mom. And she decided when her kids were a little older that she's going to go back to school. And so she signed up. She wanted to audit a paleontology class. And she asked Horner if he would give her permission to audit this class. And he did. And she was a young Earth creationist. And she told him that. I mean, he knew who she, but he let her in. And the relationship just sort of, blossomed from there. It's like, she loved the class so much. She goes, I want to go to grad school. I want to finish my degree. I want to go to grad school. And he's like, well, if you do paleontology, then you got to do field work. It's going to take years, and you got a family. And so what he did was they came up with a compromise, and they said, look, take your PhD in biology, because then you don't have to do field work, but I'll be on your committee. And we'll arrange that you can do paleontology stuff. but your department is biology. And so that's what she did. And she discovered the soft tissue in a T-Rex specimen. And the book is about how he shepherded her through the vetting process of her research and basically like protecting her from, criticism and an attack. Because this is very contrary in the world of paleontology, So how she got this published, and she finished her degree, but during the process, she changed her position to old Earth creationist. She didn't lose her faith, but she just saw, geologically, biologically, I can't hold this position anymore.
Yeah.
I bring it up for this one reason. There are young earthers out there and global flood people who will use her work to defend the young earth position. Okay, folks, I got news for you. You do not know her work better than she does. Okay, let's be honest. Let's
Amen.
quit the nonsense. Go ask her. You can find her testimony and her story. You do not know her work better than she does.
Hey,
Well, there you have it.
Let's drop Mike. Mike drop right there.
All right,
Dr.
so
Mike
I
dropped a
know-
mic. This,
I know,
Well,
John.
it's just basic honesty.
Yeah.
And if you want to know, it's just a great little book, How to Build a Dinosaur.
Yeah.
Because the book's about, Horner basically says what they show you in Jurassic Park really isn't possible. So what he's championing is
So stop it at the Pentagon. Stop it right now.
so
Because we know what you're doing. We know.
There's a velociraptor. Somebody about to get Trump.
Come
Jump
running
out
to the
this-
Smithsonian.
here's what he's after. Here's what he's after. He says, if it's true, and he of course believes it is, if it's true that birds and dinosaurs are genetically related, okay, like in the movie, okay, the birds came from dinosaurs, because of the structures and all this. He goes, if that is true in an evolutionary perspective, then the genetic code for dinosaurs is stored in the DNA of birds. Let's go find it. Okay, and in other words, genetically take that information and reproduce a dinosaur. So if you Google chickenosaurus, I'm not kidding. What they're doing, I mean,
that's going to be playing up
basically-
all on this video right now.
Oh, yeah. It's right now.
It's
It's right there. See it? Right there.
No, it's fascinating because there are people, and there's one guy in some other, he's in some European country, but they're taking the genome of a chicken, and they have the genome map, but what they don't know is which gene does what. And so you literally, you turn this one on, turn that
As
one
it
on.
was in the days of Noah.
And then you see what the result is. And so far,
some mad
now
scientist stuff here.
but just think about it. So far, now the book, I don't know, is 15 years old, so they're probably a little further now. But they have hatched chickens with yes, they have a beak, but they have the teeth of a dinosaur.
What? See, that's the
And-
This is
And
going to end
the tail.
poorly.
And the tail.
And the tail.
This is going to end
So,
poorly.
so it's like, okay, now we know which parts of the genome control this or that, and they're going to keep working it.
Telling you, there's a
Here's the
raptor
point.
coming to take Trump out. I'm telling you, you can run down the White House.
It's not changing the genome in any way.
Mm.
In Jurassic Park, they had to fill it in with a frog.
No,
You're
amphibian,
not doing that.
Yeah.
It's just turn off, turn on, turn off, turn on. It's just, like you're turning the lights on and off, okay? The day that they produce a dinosaur from chicken DNA, that will be the day when there is no argument about evolution ever again. Because that will definitively prove the case. Now, there are a lot of people who think it's definitively proven now, but I'm just saying, if you can do that, that proves that dinosaur DNA is embedded in that chicken. We didn't add anything. We didn't take anything out. We didn't change anything. It's just, what does the code do?
I wonder if you can do that with anything though. Like if you can just take a genome and start flipping it on and
Well,
off.
there's the
third
dark
head pop
side.
out.
There's the dark side.
Yeah.
Okay, Jack. You know, like we can look at this and go, oh, this is so cool. I want to see a dinosaur in my lifetime. Well,
Or
it's
Or
like,
not.
what else might be, you know what I mean? It's one of these kind of things. You know, it's in that way, it's a little frightening because it's not as frightening as synthetic biology. See, now we're back into the Halloween territory.
there we go.
Because in synthetic biology, like in my
Feels
novel,
like a good segue to lycanthropy too. Just saying.
well, in synthetic biology, nothing is impossible. Because what synthetic biology does is we're not worried about flipping switches in the genome.
Yeah.
We are taking the elements of nature and building our own. In other words, genetics allows you to read a genome. Synthetic biology lets you write a genome. It's entirely different.
I saw something like they literally had like published something out there where they had like made like a human pig hybrid or human something hybrid, like, and it was alive and they killed it. Like they were like, oh, this is we've made it, and then
that's terrible. I've seen that too.
That could be gene splicing. I don't know that that's synthetic biology, but right now you could get a PhD in synthetic biology at Harvard.
Wow.
The supervisor is Charles Church.
Wow.
Okay. And he has I'm trying to remember what his book's called. Let me look it up. I mean, I read it and I can't remember the title because I didn't understand a lot of it. But
Does your head ever hurt from knowing so much?
Mine hurt because I don't know enough.
Okay.
This is an empty space, like a vacuum.
He's just like knows stuff.
Hold on a second here. I'll find it here.
Oh man, I see that I haven't heard anything about like specifically like synthetic creating things.
I do this for my novels.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, the book is called Regenesis.
Regenesis.
It's George Church. That's why I couldn't find it the first time. George Church. And the subtitle is How Synthetic Biology Will Reinvent Nature and Ourselves.
See,
so the book is intended for lay people. You know, it's not something you'd require in your synthetic biology class. But it introduces the field. And if you read on the internet about how Harvard had a secret meeting, you know, among scientists on its faculty and nearby faculty about synthetic biology and stuff like this, that's true. Okay, they did.
I have no doubt.
Yeah.
In other words, they're and it's not like, you know, Illuminati stuff. What the reason you would do that is
Careful, they'll revoke your membership.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, you're getting too many secrets out there now.
The reason you would do that is you want to create an environment for a free discussion on what can be done, what should we try to be doing, how would we organize ourselves, you know, all this kind of stuff. Because everybody in the room knows and admits that if we start down these paths, there are huge ethical questions.
Yeah.
And so if you try to do this publicly, it's not going to go anywhere. It's going to get shut down. So they had this meeting about, it was essentially kind of like a spitballing, planning, what are we going to do? You know, like what's the future look like here in this field? And I mean, it was a legit meeting, but it was intentionally off the radar.
Yeah. But that's the thing.
Invitation only.
But like, so this is
lost.
It goes into my conspiracy side. I got a little conspiracy side on me. See, I'm this whole idea, and it seems to be some fairly credible evidence out there that there is this idea of trying to become immortal in the sense of if you could create a body, if you could create that, and then you could genetically do whatever you want to, and then like basically figure out how to unlock the conscious and put a mind into another body. Like it seems that there, especially along with like Elon Musk's neural net, all these things are kind of integrating computer systems and biomechanics. It's like it's interesting to see like what's going to happen in the next unless Jesus comes back soon, because it's going to be crazy. I mean, like
Is
kind
it
of like with
worse
Babylon.
in the days of Noah?
Yeah.
I mean, they're all like with CRISPR. I mean, CRISPR is already widely used.
What's CRISPR?
CRS. I think is there an I in CRISPR? Let me look that up.
Mm-hmm. I mean, unlike a CRISPR, like in a
CRISPR's
fridge.
been in the news. CRISPR was in the news, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years ago. But it's widely used now. CRISPR, there is an I, CRISPR. CRISPR is you should look it up on Wikipedia. Wikipedia is actually good for something now and again. It's a genome editing system that it's a chemical. I mean, I'm using very lay and probably imprecise terms, but the way that people work with DNA now to cut DNA and splice it, you use proteins, for that. CRISPR was a specially developed protein that allows not only like removal but replacement. And specifically, you can replace. It looks for matches. Like matches that'll work and all this kind of stuff. But you'd have to look it up, to get a better definition than that.
Yeah.
But like I've read books on CRISPR 2 or 1, that again, I understand parts of things like this, but I like to read science books just to know what people are working on.
Yes, sir.
And fortunately, the person who wrote this book was the lady whose lab invented CRISPR, and they're actually concerned.
Really? Like
about the possibilities here, and specifically in the book, she actually relates a meeting she had when CRISPR had gone public. She said she actually had people not only from the U.S. but from other governments, like other countries, come to her and want to weaponize it.
Wow. There you go.
They had certain questions. It was public in the sense that there was this thing out there that did this thing, and it was published under peer review. I mean, it's real. And so she said that, people started coming out of the woodwork, who wanted to use this for, she suspected, nefarious purposes, and really ethically fringy things. So the book is really about what CRISPR should be used for. Yeah. It's good potential, but also very freely admitting that basically the cat's out of the bag here.
Wow.
And CRISPR won't be the last tool like it. That this kind of stuff could be real and not. It could transcend being icky to being like
useful,
really
powerful.
dangerous.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is that's when, and this is kind of how my mind works, and so I keep running off on this rabbit trail. Well, I do want to get to the book before we go, the Stranger Things book before we go, but there's this thing, and you can talk with me on this a little bit. I believe it's that connection between mind and body, right? There has to be some type of soul connection. Like, what is the actual physical connection between the soul and the body? And I think, and this is just kind of my layman's idea of it, it's a biochemical connection. There's some kind of biochemical connection that connects us from our body to our soul and then to the unseen realm. And what I've just listening to people who talk about doing ayahuasca, who do DMT, they have these very real extra dimensional kind of connection. They will even say, they're completely atheists, will say this is a doorway to another dimension. And there are things there you talk to that are real, and that are there. And from a Christian perspective, we go, yeah, of course, that's if it is happening, then that's the spiritual realm, and that you don't need to be there because you're not covered. And so my thought is, now I got to get the actual production. I mean the article on it. They're trying. There's I think a university in Ireland that's trying to map the DMT ayahuasca world. Basically, sending people in for long trips to try to map this, because there seems to be some kind of palatial place,
the
like a
upside
thing
down, as it were.
Exactly. See, we're going to segue into that. That they're trying to map it, and it would seem to be that people, like you said, that are legitimate scientists, legitimately that are could also almost be just naturalists, would go, interested in these very metaphysical, very spiritual things, and they seem to be kind of sometimes wandering into it blindly. And what, like I always say, what could be the repercussions of that? Somebody going in and like with CERN, well, they thought, well, we do this, we could open a black hole and destroy the whole Earth within a second. We don't know what's going to happen when we flip the switch. How possible is that? Like with this genetic engineering or this DMT stuff or all those things that could.
We actually did a paranormal episode on entheogens, which is DMT's in that category of drugs. It has the word theo in it, so that gives you a little clue. I'm skeptical in this sense. What I would need to know is this really some other dimension? I know we can't really use words like spatial, for it, but is this really another dimension as opposed to a mechanism within the brain that produces this sort of information? And the reason I ask that question is I think Scripture is very clear, and I think if there's any validity, and again, I'll admit that it's circumstantial outside of Scripture, and we'll just say religion, okay? But Scripture is very clear that the soul has an existence apart from the body. So what that tells you is that the soul is not dependent on a bodily function, chemical function, whatever it is. It has its own existence. It can be disembodied. And if there is a spiritual world or a world that is separate from the material world as we know it, then there's no, here's the key word, there's no necessary connection. They would be operating in parallel and perhaps overlapping, but there's no necessary connection. So what I would need is I would need to know when we give this person this drug and they see this or that, and we presume that they have entered another dimension. On what basis can we exclude this is a movie playing in their brain?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we have to be able to distinguish these things with clarity to know basically what we're talking about or not talking about. So I don't think we're anywhere close to that. The other problem, like with the God helmet. Okay, the God helmet doesn't work with everybody. It's not the same experience. I mean, you would think if there's this place and you're using the same mechanism and we're all like human, I mean, you'd think there'd be more continuity than there is. And you'd think it would, why wouldn't it work? You know what I mean? There are just these questions, like this. So the field is interesting to me. This is going to be very biased. Okay, I'm only interested in this if it turns out to be a very good argument against materialism. If it doesn't, I don't really care about it.
Yeah.
You can just eat something spoiled, and have a wacky dream. In other words, things you ingest having a relationship to what's produced in your head, that all operates within a materialistic context. And I think some of these people in the field, that actually is what they're after. They want God to be this thing that operates inside your head only. Yeah. So you have people working on it. One group wants to say, no, there's an immaterial reality that's separate from the body, and we just go there. Yeah. By whatever mechanism, and the other group says no, there's the exact opposite.
This is all internal.
You have to be able to know what it is that thing or place is for sure, that it excludes the other. Yeah. To know what we got here. Now, you mentioned Elon Musk. Here's kind of what I'm going to use the word afraid. Here's kind of what I'm afraid of, but only in the sense that it would have great deceptive power. It's one thing to be able to tap into the brain, which is the organ of information storage. And extract that information and transfer it.
Yeah.
That is not the same as, again, a disembodied soul.
Yeah.
But I'm afraid if Musk or somebody else is able to do the information retrieval and transfer, it will be marketed as the discovery of the soul, or the answer to what the soul is in a materialist context, and people will buy it hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, definitely.
So they'll pay big money to have their consciousness transferred into a machine.
Yes.
Meanwhile, their soul will go into eternity without Jesus.
Exactly.
And there ain't no return policy on that.
Right. See, how do we know? And again, what I'm asking for is, and I don't think it's an unreasonable thing to ask for, because these are high claims, and so I don't think my request transcends the claim, and that is, I want to know with as much as is humanly possible, absolute certainty that this is happening and it's really not this.
Right.
So until you can demonstrate across the board, any person, I mean, the results are always the same, that kind of thing. Until you can do that, where it's this and not this, and when we're over here, we're not talking about that. Until you can do that, I'm really not enamored with your work.
Yeah.
In other words, because it
So you hear that, Elon Musk, Dr. Heiser is just not that impressed by you.
Because it would leave me with fundamental questions unanswered, and that is not satisfactory.
Yeah.
As spectacular as this thing would be, that is not satisfactory.
Yeah.
And I'm just being honest. These are questions I need answered. I mean, market it as you will. If these questions are not answered, I'm not impressed with your marketing.
Yeah.
I'm just not.
Yeah.
You heard it here on Guy Stuff first. All right. So I know your time is short. So I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire quick.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes or no, Halloweeny questions. All right. So I'm going to say something, and
I said something potentially embarrassing coming here.
is it real or not real? Just yes or no. All right, here we go. Number one, ghost, real or not real?
I'll say real, but I think there's different categories.
Okay.
All right.
Rip.
2, werewolves, lycanthropy.
Yeah, I don't buy that.
All right. 3, vampires.
If you're talking about the Hollywood vampire, I don't buy that either.
Okay.
Oh,
See, we did a whole episode on vampirism.
I saw that
Yes,
one. I watched that
yeah.
one. Yeah.
we're trying to help you direct people over there. We're like that. Dragons, real, not real. Did they live with humans?
Again, if you're talking about fire, if you're talking about smog, no, I'm not buying that.
Dang it. Come on, Dr. Heiser.
No, wait.
Lord of the Rings thing, man.
I'm buying dinosaurs, but it's
Cognitive dissonance. Cognitive
It's the
dissonance.
fire breathing and magical stuff. Okay.
Right.
And they can talk to you. I'm
I
not
want a
saying-
talking dragon. Golly.
So
Dr.
do
Heiser.
you in there
really
somewhere
big
allow?
lizards, okay.
Do you in there somewhere allow that dinosaurs existed with humans?
I don't think we have any evidence for that at this point. Although, since I like cryptozoology, I'm willing to entertain the idea of a dinosaur survival, and so that would overlap.
There you go.
But I don't think as a norm. I don't think we have any evidence for that.
Like the
And
one in
please,
Africa.
Okay, please don't do the Paluxy riverbed tracks. Okay?
Do what now?
Don't just
the big
Share with
freaking-
folks.
they're those alleged human footprints that overlap with dinosaur footprints that the Institute for Creation Research later recanted about. Don't bring.
You
those
don't ever hear that story.
Kim
What
Ham,
is that story?
Kim Ham
John-
don't throw that one out to you, does he? Kim Ham don't tell you that, does he, Anthony?
John Morris, who was Henry Morris's son, the ICR initially promoted this as evidence of co-occupation, but John had to give that up. They had to basically say no, that's not the case.
There
So
you go.
anyway, I mean, it didn't change the young Earth position. It just said we're not going to use
That
this
evidence, yeah. That evidence is not valid. Yeah, good. What else you got? What else you got, Anthony? You got one more? Any more rapid fire? Oh,
All right,
I got a question there, quick. Well, to tie to this, do you think that if that with your book, Stranger Things, do you think there could be a rip in space and time where we could go into the alternate dimension and be the upside down?
I've been there since 1987.
You know, the part that I don't like about the question is the word rip.
Okay, all right. A hole,
A shift, as it
blending.
were.
I don't think there are portals.
Okay.
I don't think supernatural beings need portals.
Ooh.
There you go.
I think if you're a
Interesting
supernatural being, you can come and go as you want. I don't think we need specific places and portals.
Well, dang, then we can't keep them out.
Well, why
what
would you
Jesus
think
for.
we could?
That's
Why
what
would you
Jesus is
think
for.
That's interesting because that takes me back to Samhain earlier. You know, the Celts, they believed on, you know, the eve of Samhain that the veil was thin and the dead could pass to the living. So you're saying, fellas,
Well, I don't think we need I don't think that supernatural beings, they don't operate by a calendar. Oh crap! You know, it's like it's 2 weeks before I can go harass them. No, they're not doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, why would we think that again, the word necessary? Why would we think there's a necessary link to calendar and a certain time of year, and it's the festival thing and what's done on certain times of year
And
to me
it
is
says to
actually more
align.
important. That's more important because I do think solicitation is a big deal.
Yeah.
I think that's more essential than anything else.
There you go. There you go. So there we have it. We have solved
sense.
why those times are there, because people wanted to be there and they wanted to bring
You know,
in
with a lot of these things, I think they are true in certain ways. But like the dragon thing, okay, but by the time they come to us, there's so much accrued to them that it sort of defies a simple, yes or no. Even ghosts. 1 Samuel 28, we have the disembodied Samuel. Okay, so that's not an evil spirit; it's a disembodied human spirit. The Hebrew Bible has terms for both that and something that's non-human. Okay, so that's why I answered that question yes. But even that, it's like that doesn't really solve what they are, why they're here. It doesn't answer all those questions. And typically you get folklore, you get legend, you get honest anecdotal experience that accrue to these things that just make it messy.
Amen.
There it is, folks. There it is. Dr. Heiser survived another episode with us.
I think it's the other way around.
No, I would keep you on here for another couple hours, Dr. Heiser. If you didn't have to, if you weren't such a busy man, I'd be like, let's just keep talking. But we know you're a busy man.
It's amazing.
We thank you for coming on.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you. It's because we only done 2. It's always fun, so we're 2 for 2.
All right,
exactly. We're good. We're good.
Tell your friends. Tell your friends.
Exactly.
All right, gang. So we do have, again, there's a contest. There's John and I. If you're listening to this, you're going to have to go over to YouTube and watch it while you're there. Click subscribe, share with a friend or somebody you don't like. That's okay, too. And there's some weird stuff we have shared throughout the episode. We'll have rules again on the Facebook page. We'll put up the rules for you so you can win some cool reading material from Dr. Heiser. It genuinely will change your life. I mean that. I have been consuming everything I could get my hands on. I'm not even trying to blow smoke. It's just wow, it connects all these dots. If you really want to have a lot of dots connected about stuff that you thought but maybe couldn't prove, you can either take ayahuasca or you can read Dr. Heiser's books. I chose the books. All right. So thanks for joining us on another episode of Guy Stuff. We'll see you soon. Peace.
Thank you.